Welcome to the Truth Podcast. I'm your host, Hany Rambod, and I have a very special guest, a local celebrity. I call you a celebrity, Jason. Jason has won the CrossFit Championship. What year was that, Jason?
I won in 2008.
Yeah. So Jason Khalipa has been someone, I think you were in your mid-20s when you won, right?
Yeah, I was in my early 20s actually when I won. And then I ended up competing for the next, 8 years.
Yeah. And you started these amazing gyms, NC Fit.
Yeah.
You started those, and now I see them all over because I literally, from where I live in Los Gatos all the way to where the office is in Campbell and the whole neighborhood, I see NC Fits. I see them over off of Bascom, and I think that's your main one, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's our main location. And then, we started here in the Bay Area. And so I won the CrossFit Games actually here in the Bay Area. It was actually in Aromas, which is like on your way, like Salinas area.
Uh-huh.
And that's where the original first couple of CrossFit Games were. And then they moved to LA and now they're in Wisconsin actually.
That's cool. That's cool. And CrossFit was found in Santa Cruz, right?
Yeah. So the founder, his name is Greg Glassman, and he founded it in Santa Cruz. And so I went to the original CrossFit. This was really a long time ago. They had a single site. It was in a warehouse. And then from there, it kind of, grew really quickly. But yes, it was out of Santa Cruz.
Yeah. So people are going to be asking me, why do I have a CrossFitter here on my podcast where it's a bodybuilding podcast?
I don't even know why I'm on.
Well, for several reasons. And let me explain why. Because as we've been branching out, not only are you an amazing CrossFitter and a world champion at what you do, which I definitely want to talk about the mindset of becoming a world champion at what you do and becoming the absolute very best in your space. But also you become an amazing entrepreneur. You got a great family. You got a beautiful family. And we share a lot of things in common. And the person that kind of connected us, even though, I heard about you for a very long time and we literally live a couple of miles away from each other. That's right. It was Sal Frisella.
Yeah. I was out actually at first form and Sal's like, hey, you know this guy, Hany? I was like, yeah, I've heard, but he's like, hey, he's kind of Persian. You're kind of Persian. You guys live nearby each other. You guys should meet. I was like, okay.
In so many different ways. It's so funny. And for those that don't know, because I do have a huge Persian following, because there's a ton of Persians that follow bodybuilding. They follow myself, Hadi Chopin, who's been top 5 at the Olympia the last couple of years. It's been crazy because your father's Persian.
Yeah, my dad's from Iran. Yeah,
your dad's from Iran originally, and I believe you were born here though, right? Weren't you born in Santa Clara?
Yeah, I was born here. My mom is from Rhode Island, but her family came from Italy. And then my dad came from Iran.
Right. So you got the Italian hairiness and then you got the Persian hairiness.
Dude, I just got it doubled. You know?
Yeah.
And then my wife has a similar background actually. So my wife's dad is from Iran as well. They both came here right before the revolution.
Uh-huh.
And then the rest of their families all came over for the most part after the revolution.
So around the time my family came in the 70s.
Yeah.
Before the revolution. And then just when things kind of got, the revolution happened, they just stayed.
Well, yeah. So my dad came here before the revolution, and then my grandparents actually came here during the revolution. So they were part of the Assyrians from Iran.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, it was just a lot of turmoil, and they ended up just leaving everything behind. It was a really interesting story because my grandfather was pretty high up in the oil industry,
mm-hmm.
and they were relatively well-to-do in Iran. And they came here with essentially nothing. Thankfully, my dad was already here, but they started a dry cleaning business. And I have, memories as a child. These guys were in their 70s at the time, probably
mm-hmm.
late 60s, 70s. And they were just grinding it out at the dry cleaning business. So it was really a testament to the hard work.
Yeah. It's funny because they come over here. That's what makes America so great, right? It literally is the land of opportunity, being able to come over here and hustle your ass off to be able to build a better life for your family. And I think, happened with my family. It's happened with your family. And also a lot of the cool thing about it that I've really noticed, especially recently, is just how patriotic a lot of immigrants are.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like in a lot of ways more so than people who just take for granted what they have here, because they don't realize how good they have it. And I don't know if you feel the same way or not.
Yeah, for sure. My dad is the first one who says, hey, I left there for a reason, right? And you look at all the people that want to come into the United States, it's for a reason. And I think when you're here, you could kind of take it for granted a little bit. But I do believe, we live in an amazing place. We just got to appreciate it more.
We do. And I think, and when I say patriotic, I'm talking about just the fact that they appreciate all of the freedoms of being able to say whatever you want.
Yeah.
Where you don't get dragged away and taken away and put in cuffs because you don't agree with somebody else. So it's a blessing for us to be able to have that. And I think that firsthand, I came over when I was like 1 or 2 years old. Your family was here before you were born here, but at the end of the day, I think that a lot of that culture came across with that appreciation.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, culturally, you get it from both sides. You get the Italian side and the Persian side, and it's not. It was a nice way to grow up.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, you got some good genetics because you're one of the few CrossFitters. And CrossFit, it's weird because a lot of people that do CrossFit, most people are just not really involved in bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is just purely aesthetic. And the great thing about it is, if you guys haven't seen this yet, we're going to be launching the video of myself training you. And it was like your first bodybuilding type of video. I mean, a workout.
Yeah.
And we videoed it. And we brought Derek along, our 212.
Yeah, and Derek was great, by the way. He was super cool, super down to earth guy. That was great.
Derek's a great guy. And while he was out here, I thought it would be really cool because not only were we going to be able to do a workout with you, but how you can see another bodybuilder right next to you do it. And even though you come from the CrossFit, I know that you're like, I look at your arms, you got, you're vascular through your arms. You're a guy that has a physique that could compete, in one of the different divisions. And we were joking about this because I was on your podcast. So
maybe one day.
Yeah. But the whole thing is that this, when you guys know that I worked with Mark Bell, and it was off of a podcast, and we discussed it on your podcast that I was on a couple of weeks ago that just dropped, that's how he ended up competing. It was kind of one of those things where he's just like, oh, well, what are you challenging me? And I said, yeah, because at the end of the day, he was so good at powerlifting, but he always was curious about bodybuilding. Tell me about your bodybuilding background, because again, you got arms and you have one of the more aesthetically pleasing physiques in CrossFit. But did you bodybuild when you were younger, or were you someone who just naturally had the body that just grew through doing CrossFit?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of, genetics play a factor. I was introduced to fitness at a really young age because I started working at the front desk when I was 15 of a health club, and I was exposed to a lot of your traditional buys, tries, back buys, etc. I was also exposed to a lot of bodybuilders there. And so when I graduated from high school, I started getting into college, I started doing sales. And at that point, I was fully immersed in the gym. So I was either at school or I was at the gym working. And we were surrounded mainly by two groups of people, or 3 groups. People just came in and did their elliptical, did their treadmill and left. That's fine. A group that was like hardcore bodybuilder, very much interested in the aesthetic look. And then a third group, which was like a kickboxing and jiu-jitsu, was also in the gym, which was really cool. So I exposed myself to each one of those areas while I worked there. And particularly the bodybuilding style, that was just what I knew. That was just the way I trained. But then when I got into kickboxing and other areas, then I found CrossFit a couple of years later, and that changed my mindset quite a bit. So, what I found interesting when you and I were training with Derek was just the difference in the mindset. So the mindset that I take into each workout is, how do I perform as many reps as I can, as quickly as I can, as easily as I can? That's like the theory. How do I get more work done in less time? How do I move larger amounts of weight? And technical ability becomes critical. For you, it was less about the amount of weight you're moving, less about the amount of reps you're doing, and more about the pump you were getting, more about the stimulus on the particular muscle. And it was so weird for me to think differently that way. And I don't know how many people listening to this can relate to this, because I think maybe they come from that background. But for me, being ingrained in this idea of being as efficient as I can, as moving as much as I can, to, hey, am I positioning myself well to pump the muscle up more and make it harder intentionally?
Right.
It was very unique.
Right. Because we did chest. So that video, I believe, just dropped for us this morning. So it's on the YouTube channel. So if you guys haven't checked it out, check it out. And what it shows is that you're trying to process things as a bodybuilder for the first time, meaning that you're trying to get maximum time under tension on your chest instead of just moving the weight.
So weird.
It is.
Yeah.
It is, because you kept trying to wrap your brain around it, because you're like, when I do pull-ups, I just do pull-ups. And I guess what's the closest thing that you would consider as a movement in CrossFit for chest? Is there?
I mean, I would put bench press in there, but
Okay.
when you're going for bench
So
press,
do you guys actually do bench press? Because I know very little about CrossFit.
yeah, I mean, you would do bench press. So the best way to think about CrossFit, if you want to talk about like competitive CrossFit,
Mhm.
it'd be unlikely to get in a bench press competition. So you wouldn't work it as much, but you work a variety of presses. So for example, it could be a shoulder press, push jerk, which is just, kind of like this vertical press. Then you would work a horizontal press, would be like a bench press. And then you'd work kind of like this downward press, which would be dips, ring dips, muscle ups. So I think we think about things less in terms of what muscle group we're incorporating and more in terms of what function am I trying to perform. So a deadlift, for example, it works your hamstrings. Maybe a bodybuilder thinks about it that way. I think about it more as pulling an object from the ground to a standing position. And what is that going to help me with doing other things? It's more of what function am I looking for versus what muscle group. So, but yes, we incorporate I would say the closest thing would be bench press.
Got it. So when you guys do your bench press and you do your workouts of the day, do you write those up I know you have an app and you have like these trainers that follow these workouts. Does that something where you just say, hey, you're going to do, is that like a thing? Like, do you say, hey, we're going to do presses? Because when I go to your gym has got kettlebells. It's got an Olympic bar. They've got some like a hex bar. They've got ropes. They've got a bunch of different types of equipment, but much more in the functional. So tell me a little bit about what a CrossFit workout would be. Would it be wrapped around just movements, or because everything we do is around body parts,
right? Yeah, it's a totally different idea, right? So if you talk about traditional CrossFit, and over the years we've kind of pivoted. So our business started off as NorCal CrossFit, then we pivoted to NC Fit to be more representative of a variety of different programs and to be in control of our brand and our destiny. So we have a few programs. When you talk about traditional CrossFit, we'll start there. It's traditionally 3 days on, 1 day off, single modality days, couplets, triplets, and then long, short, and medium workouts. So what I mean by that is that how we've adopted that is we have a variety of programs. One would have more complex, one is less complex. And when we mean less complex is we have a whole programming team. What they do is they look at the year and say, hey, what are the year's goal? What are we trying to get our members better at? Then they break it down to quarterly, monthly, weekly, and daily focuses. So throughout the duration of a week, you take our NC Metcon program, which is our more complex. You might pull from the ground twice a week, squat twice a week. Okay. You might press once or twice a week. And we say, okay, then you want to hit time domains. So you say, hey, I want to hit a shorter time domain. Maybe that's sub 10 minutes. I want to hit a medium time domain, which is...
So how long is the average workout?
Well, traditionally, again, depending on what you're looking at, if you go in there and you want to do like a single day, it's an hour-long class. Some days have a strength. So maybe it's a 5x5 back squat. Some days, then you go from a strength into a conditioning workout that's anywhere from 12 to 20 minutes, let's just say. Mm-hmm. That's going to be one example. Another example could be you come in, you warm up, you do some skill work, and you could do a 30-minute chipper where it's a bunch of exercises. You just work through it as quickly as you can. So every day is unique. Every day is different, which is one of the reasons why, from a practical perspective, the ability to kind of help outside the gym, it works so well, is because you're stimulating muscles almost every day differently than you did the day before. And no workout, rarely, is identical to the day before.
Got it. And when you do that, basically 5 days a week, 6 days a week, how is that broken down?
Well, so for me, I train our NC Fit workouts, I'd say probably 5 days a week. I do jujitsu 3 days a week in addition to that, or sometimes by itself. And then I'll go out on like a long run or a long bike ride once or twice a week. So
how long is that?
I'll do like a 2-hour bike ride. Nothing crazy, but when I was really training for the games, it's a totally different thing because you're a professional athlete trying to be the fittest on earth in a sport that could be so broad.
Because you don't know what's going to happen that day, right?
You have no idea.
So what happens, you guys, when do you find out what those exercises are? Because I'm assuming they're just keeping it all hush hush, right?
Yeah. So that's look, that's one of the challenges of CrossFit, right? Is that it's constantly reinventing. The games are always new, which is good and bad, right? It's good because it's kind of dramatic, but it's bad because as a spectator, it's kind of hard to follow sometimes because every year is different. So I've had some years where you show up and you're doing 10 events. Some years you show up and you're doing 20 events. Some days you start on Wednesday, some days you start on Thursday, Friday. But like, as I progressed with the sport and the sport progressed, it was cool to watch how you went from like trying to crown this quote fittest on earth in a few days to a week almost, where the first day you might end up with an hour-long swim into a 2-hour-long run into another hour-long something else. And that was kind of like your long endurance day. Let's test people on that. Then you have right after that, maybe you're going for a 1-rep max deadlift and let's test people on that. Then you might have other events where you have to walk on your hands as far as you can.
How many days are these events?
Traditionally now, like 1, 2, 3, like 4, 5.
Wow.
And but because what you're trying to do is you're trying to take like this concept. It's called the hopper model. So essentially take like that popcorn model where like you put a bunch of like a bingo hopper, and you say, hey, if I put any physical task and I threw it in there, how well are the people going to be able to perform at it? So the theory is you get prepared for this hopper challenge, and whatever events come out, you see how you stack up against your peers, and whoever statistically places the best over the week wins.
So it's almost like American Ninja Warrior, but times 10.
It's like American Ninja Warrior meets a triathlon, meets a strongman and Olympic weightlifting. But everybody is not the best at any of them. They're just good at all of them.
Right. Because it's all about averaging it out.
Right. So like you're not going to have the strongest person. You're not going to have the quickest person. You're going to have someone that could do well at both. So like my goal was always, hey, how low of a mile time can I get? And how high of a back squat can I get? Right. Both.
So with all that being said, how many of these people are really dialing in their nutrition? Like, what does a nutrition piece of that look like?
Yeah. I mean, when I got into CrossFit in 2008, it was a little bit different then. You can compete at a high level and not make it a professional athlete. So what I did is in 2008, I graduated from Santa Clara University.
Mm-hmm. What did you get your degree in?
Business management. As soon as I graduated, I opened a business because I knew I was already working in the health club for years before that. And so I opened a business and I won the CrossFit Games all at the same time. So kind of,
which by the way, that never happens, right?
Yeah. So it stemmed into this kind of symbiotic relationship where I competed professionally, built the business concurrently. And back then you can get away with it. Now as the sport has progressed and I competed in it for 8, 10 years, et cetera, it got to a point where it became a full-time job in itself, right? And you can make quite a bit of money in it if you have the right sponsors, if you perform well. From a nutrition perspective back then, it was important, but it wasn't like the single criteria. Now, the key component for most pro CrossFit athletes is recovery. How hard can I train and how much can I recover? I mean, these guys are training now. I would train probably like 3 hours a day back then. Now, most guys are training 4 to 5 hours a day, especially getting ready for the CrossFit Games. You need to do these longer style events.
Wow. So speaking of all these events, what I noticed, especially when I was watching some of the stuff on ESPN, is that you guys have Reebok. You have like a lot of like really mainstream sponsors. So there's a lot of money pumping in it. And, we're not used to those mainstream sponsors in the bodybuilding world. It's a lot of the more specific niche type sponsors. I can only imagine that it's a pretty lucrative with some of these sponsorships, correct?
Yeah. What made CrossFit unique, and I hope it continues to grow, and I hope the sport does well. It's gone through some changes in the last couple of years, is that 99% of spectators also participated in the sport. That's unique. And because the sport of CrossFit is essentially, you're exercising for time, you're performing, it's the sport of fitness. Many people can, at some levels, relate to it versus watching some other sport that you can't.
Like boxing. Most people, 99% of people who watch boxing have never
boxed. Got these guys talking shit, but then all of a sudden they have no idea what it's like to get punched in the face, right? But that's one of the reasons why it drew quite a bit of attention and sponsorship. So Reebok came in 2010, and I was fortunate enough to be one of their first sponsored athletes, and I'm still currently sponsored by them. So it's been 11 years I've been professionally sponsored by Reebok, and that one was really cool because it kind of made us feel like, man, we're kind of on the map now. And if you are performing well as a CrossFit athlete, I don't know how it works in bodybuilding, but let's just say, for example, the open is the initial step to CrossFit Games. in recent years, there's again been some challenges, but anywhere about 400,000 people start off
Wow.
and they register. Then from there, you go into what's called the regionals, or now it's a different name, but back when I was competing, it was called regionals. And so what they would do is, depending on how you performed in open, they would take you to regionals. Depending on how you performed there, then you would qualify for the games. Depending on how you did there, then you go qualified to represent your country. So that was like the steps, right? Open, regionals, games, and then Team USA if you warranted it. Well, if you are a top contender and you could get through those series and you could perform well at the games, maybe there's about, I'd say, 20 athletes that are doing pretty well, making 6 figures plus. And then there's probably about, maybe more than that, maybe like 30 or 40. Then there's probably about 10 to 20 that are making some real money.
We're talking about millions.
I mean, there's about 5 that are probably making real money.
We're talking about like million plus.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd say, yeah.
So is there a first place prize?
Yeah.
You know, like we have at Mr. Olympia's 400,000 for winning the Olympia,
which is great. I mean, that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, this year it's 300,000.
Okay. So note to self, the actual Mr. Olympia is more than the CrossFit first place prize.
That's right.
Wow.
So,
I didn't expect that, to be honest with you.
And the way it works is, and this was more back in the day, but it pays to win was always a theory, right?
Right.
Is that meaning like the first place was 300, second place is like 180, right?
Mm-hmm.
It drops down pretty dramatically. And then it drops down from there. And then
Right.
I think the top 20 get paid something. But I mean, when I got into it, to put in perspective, when I won the CrossFit Games, I won $1,800. Then over the next couple of years, I took second and third in 2000.
Wait. $1,800 for winning the world championship of CrossFit.
This is back in the day,
yeah,
right?
but you got to remember, when you say back in the day, the last time the Mr. Olympia gave out that kind of money, we were talking about probably like 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? 40 years ago, not 13 years ago.
Well, so when did bodybuilding really start? When did Mr. Olympia start? How many years is it old?
I think it's in the it's got to be, you can probably look it up, probably 50. So Phil won 4 or 5 years ago, the 50th anniversary award, Sandow, and that was the gold one. And now it's probably 5 or 6 years later since he won that one. And I would say so probably like 55, 56 years, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Between 55 and 60 years.
So to put in perspective, the first ever CrossFit Games were in 2007. So you're coming on.
So you won the second one.
I won the second ever. And then from there, it just exploded. So like, for example, I took a first and then I was in the top 10 for a while. And then I got back to second and third in 13 and 14. And my prize purse for the third or even second and third was like in the hundreds of thousands, right? Like,
so it jumped up dramatically.
Oh yeah. Compared to when I won.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you went from 13, was it, you said 1,300? 1,800 bucks. So that was probably, I want to say, even when Dorian Yates was winning in the 90s, it was $100,000.
Yeah.
So you're talking about when Reg Park and some of those old time bodybuilders were doing things. Maybe even it's got to be even before Arnold was in that number when Arnold was winning in the 70s. So, but the good thing is it just exploded. It exploded. And how many people competed in the year you won in 2008? How many people competed?
So in that year, I competed against like, I want to say 300.
Okay.
But then that's where it gets weird, right? So it started off with 300. The next year I went and competed, I took 5th. And there was, I don't know, like 1,000.
Okay.
Then the next year they said, oh shit, well, we can't have 1,000 people show up to this thing. We need to start having qualifying processes.
Okay, because they didn't have them back then.
No, not back then. And then it was a qualifier. So then again, for the next years, I competed. And that's why it was fun for me because I watched the sport really, really grow. And now it's kind of found its spot a little bit. Mm-hmm. But we went from like the Carson, which was like a ranch, to the Home Depot Center, which was really made us feel like, man, we're on to something. That's where the Galaxy played. And it was really cool. And those are the years it was on ESPN. And, I was able to.
Why did that go away?
It's really complicated. The history of CrossFit is really unique because the founder was the sole owner who created a methodology called CrossFit. Mm-hmm. So when people look at something and say, oh, that person's doing CrossFit, it's not as simple as that because it's also a brand.
Got it.
So unlike saying bodybuilding is a way of training.
Right.
It's not a brand necessarily. Right. So anybody could be a bodybuilder or whatever. But when you start saying, hey, I am a CrossFit gym, it means you're paying CrossFit a license to be able to use that mark. So where things got a little bit weird is that it's a brand, it's a methodology, and it also is a sport. So that's why it's had some adjustments over the years.
Got it. Got it. And so when did that start coming off of ESPN? How many years ago did that start?
I mean, I stopped competing professionally in 2015. My daughter got sick, so I stopped competing then. I don't know how many years I would have kept competing. I don't know. Because I felt like I was only getting better, but that's neither here nor there. But I would say it got off in, I want to say it got off in like 15 or 16. That's when it got off.
That's when it started to kind of come off of the ESPN.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you remember, because you're still quite a bit younger than me. You're about, you're in mid 30s, right?
Yeah, 35.
You're 35. And so when I was growing up, bodybuilding was still on ESPN. So we would see Sean Ray, Flex Wheeler, all those guys on American Muscle Magazine and all that online. So you would see, on television, albeit late at night.
Yeah.
Because it's cheaper. But it was like at 9 or 10 o'clock, you see Flex Wheeler.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
Yeah, it was a really, really big deal. And it was that's, the heyday of bodybuilding on TV. But when I used to watch CrossFit, and we'd see it in the gym, right? So I'm sitting there doing my bodybuilding workouts, and you'd see this gigantic crowd.
What the hell are these people doing?
Well, I'm like, what's going on? And this is huge. And you see like whether it's Reebok or whether you see these gigantic sponsors, and you'd see, like I said, a ton of mainstream sponsors. It'd be either Ford or Chevy or something in the background, and you'd see these gigantic mainstream sponsors. I was just kind of blown away. And I'm like, what is that all about? And you see a lot of people that are jacked, but they're jacked because of what they're doing, not with how they're trying to do it.
That's the biggest difference, right? I mean, the whole idea is, for the longest time, my mentality was never about what I looked like and always about how I perform. And I mean, for some points, that's still the way it is today, right? Like, I'm trying to perform in jiu-jitsu. I'm trying to perform in my daily life. But there's also a side like, hey, you want to look good too. But when I was competing professionally, my goal was singularly focused. How do I get myself as physically fit as possible? That means that my weight needed to be the appropriate amount to benefit me for heavy lifts.
What was that weight? Where did you think
for me, like 208.
208. And you're how tall?
5'9.5", 5'9". So 208 was the number where I feel like I was light enough to do gymnastics, but heavy enough to lift well. And I was on the heavier side. The right weight for CrossFit is probably around 190 pounds, 185, 190.
For that height.
For like a 5'8", 5'9" guy. Yeah.
Is there kind of like a World's Strongest Man where it's like you need to have a little bit of extra height for some of those lifts? That
it actually, the guys who are really at the top, again, it probably benefits a little bit of a shorter person than a taller person.
Got it.
Yeah.
And that for what exercises?
I mean, for all kinds of stuff, handstand, push-ups. I mean, you name it. Just because range of motion, it's a little bit faster to turn over.
Right.
When you're 6'3", it's a little bit more difficult in certain areas. And so traditionally, I'd say like the avatar, like what would be like a 5'8", 5'9", 190 is probably like the number.
That's it right there.
And there's ranges above.
So if you had to build the ideal athlete, it'd basically be you. It'd be you minus 10 pounds.
It'd be, yeah. I mean, I was on the heavier side, but it benefited me on certain events, but it hurt me on other events.
But it's also because you have legs.
Yeah, I have legs. I mean, but that's also why I spend so much time at the track and I worked so many weaknesses. And that's really the theory behind CrossFit, is that you spend a lot of time working the things that you don't want to do. And the mindset piece is very strong there. Obviously, you have to push through a lot of pain. It's not better or worse. It's just different than bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is very much, at least when I did it with you, was so centrally focused on getting the muscle engaged, versus this is like, how do I run a faster mile and then go pick up this weight and go do these different things? It's just totally different.
Yeah, it's totally different. But it's cool because the great thing about you is that I was like, you've always had a great physique for even just doing CrossFit and not doing the bodybuilding movements. And I asked you, I go, wait a minute, Jason, how long has it been since you've done a bodybuilding workout? And you're like, probably forever, because you haven't done the machines because they're not in your gym. It's not a part of your criteria. And the time that you are spending outside of your own gym, you're doing a lot of jujitsu.
Yeah.
So therefore it's, that's kind of what you're focused on.
I would safely say a couple of years ago, I did a buys and tries workout with CT Fletcher.
Okay.
That was the last time that I touched cables. I did anything to do with bodybuilding. And that was just buys and tries. I have never done what we did, right? And I've never done it with that intention, right? So the biggest difference between what you and I did and what I've done in the past is that the intention was very specific. And it reminds me a lot of how we approach workouts at our gyms, where we talk to our members about, hey, what is the intention for the day, right? Are we trying to sprint? Are we trying to, keep it medium? Or are we trying to go long? What heart rate are we looking for? Just kind of general baseline ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you brought the intention in, it's like, hey, the intention is this for right now. I want you to do half reps. I want you to do this to really engage. And then the hard part was getting off and being able to hold those flexes.
Yeah, you were having problems flexing because
Yeah,
you
really
didn't
hard.
really understand how to get that mind-muscle connection.
Yeah, that was tough.
And it was weird because I could see the wheels turning and you're trying to figure out how Derek was squeezing his pecs. And then I'd go over and touch your upper pec and I'd go squeeze there. And you were trying to find it. And it was like a duckling learning how to walk.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, I don't know how to do that because you're not used to trying to engage it. You're not used to engaging the muscle. You're just used to lifting. And so it's like retraining that mind muscle connection was very, very strange.
Yeah. And it was a lot of fun for me. And I think it's actually from a coaching perspective, it was very beneficial because I've had the opportunity, and this is one of the things that the CrossFit Games, did a few things for me. It did a lot of things for me, but it allowed me to go meet with a lot of amazing coaches and go learn a lot of crazy stuff, but never did I focus on bodybuilding because it was never about the aesthetic look. So it was nice to learn from you.
Yeah, no, and I think it was really fun because, like I said, you already have good arms, you have a good chest, you have good shoulders, you're in great shape. But to be able to kind of redirect that athleticism that you have as an athlete into the bodybuilding space, because you already have good arms, but it's just, it's like bodybuilders that did other sports that have good body parts because they just did other sports, but those muscles grew. That was kind of you. And now that we're doing it, how long, when we did chest, how many days were you sore?
I was sore. I was sore. I think I was sore. I was sore to like the touch, right?
Yeah.
For a couple of days,
Uh-huh.
but it wasn't as bad as I thought. Meaning like in hindsight, I was a little worried, right? As I went through, I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to be fucking so sore. And I wasn't as sore as I thought.
Right.
I think it's because we didn't overdo it. We did quite a few reps, quite a few sets, but it wasn't like,
and it wasn't
the
super
top.
heavy either too. And we didn't go super heavy.
Yeah, but it was just perfect. It was just the right concept for that day. And it's funny because you were at the gym with me and you're like, hey man, take off your shirt. And it's just so weird, right? Because like you would never like, and you're asking me to do these poses, and I'm just like, dude, I don't know what poses you're talking about right now. You're like, do the double
bicep,
front, whatever.
Do a front double bicep, do most muscular.
But it's fun because if you're into fitness, I think you should at least have a baseline knowledge of a variety of different fitnesses. You should know about some of the powerlifters. You should know about Olympic lifts. You should at least be aware.
Yeah.
And when you think about bodybuilding, there's so much more to it than what meets the eye in terms of the diet, in terms of the dedication, but also in terms of the way they're approaching the lifts. And I think that, for someone who's not as into it, I used to watch people at the conventional gym when I worked there, and you would watch them kind of flex in the mirror. And that was fine. I used to look at it like they were being a little bit vain and whatnot.
Right.
But I think what I didn't realize at the time is that they're really, part of it is they want to look jacked and whatever. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But another part of it is they're actually trying to see like, hey, how do I stimulate this muscle as much as I can?
100%.
And I want to get feedback from the mirror.
Yeah. And, when I was with Derek about a month ago and we were in Texas, I see all the young guys and, they're all taking their shirts off now in the gym. We were at Destination Dallas. And it was one of those gyms where at first I was kind of the same way because I grew up in an era of the Dorian Yates era where you just kept covered up. There was no social media. You come in, you compete, you'd leave. That's how he was. So when you would read the magazines and you would watch everybody, people wore those big like bum equipment type shirts and the California body wear, and they would wear these massive Gator. I'm remembering some of the old 80s type of brands and 90s brands, but platinum body wear, and it was those genie pants with those big sweatshirts.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't see what anybody looked like until like the day or two before the show or the day after the show. I was the kind of guy who I wouldn't even show anything till after the show because I was so self-conscious all the time of just trying to peak for the show. And it didn't matter what I looked like the day before, a week before or whatever. Where now at 13 weeks out, guys are taking off their clothes and they're posing and they're doing stuff for social media. There's stuff for Instagram. They're doing stuff for whatever platform that they're trying to post on. And then there's also the whole phenomenon that's going on, the whole thought process of I want to get that better mind muscle connection. And I'm very big on that, on flexing. And then, because if you can be able to focus, look at the mirror and you're squeezing your chest and you're getting more time under tension after you do the exercise, you're going to get much more stimulation out of it. But some of these younger guys are putting the kind of the, what you call the vainness of it, I guess, and mix that up with kind of the time under tension. And then they just go straight off. They were taking off their shirts and they're just going crazy. And it was like, it was in Texas. It was like 20 guys doing a pose down and it was going on all night. And I was laughing because I'm like, there, back in the day when I was growing up, nobody would even wear a tank top, let alone take off their shirts. But, and the guys look good by all means. It's cool. But I think that whole incorporation of the two different philosophies, one's functional and one's more just the aesthetic.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that neither are better or worse, just totally different approaches and different goals. Yeah. But the idea of time under tension is really unique because something I've done, and I had a endurance coach who taught me a lot about just time on your feet, time under tension, things like that. And he would have us do some drills in particular, like let's just say you're doing like push-ups and you're burning yourself out. And then you go from trying to do push-ups, then when you can't do them anymore, you lay on your back and use a PVC pipe and you just try and flush out the system using like a really light object, but you're working through the same range of motion. What he was trying to work on in particular with me is learning how do you develop this lactic acid where you start really burning, and then how do you flush it out of your system as quickly as you can so you can recover quicker. And so there's similar ideas, but it's a little bit different where you're coming off your big pump, then you're holding and you're just trying to get that flex for more time under tension, hold, and then you're done. Whereas for me, when I was training, it was, hit the red line and then drop it down, see how quick you could flush it out and then get right back into it. It was just a different mindset of training.
Did you feel that helped you with, was that strength, endurance, both?
Yeah. I mean, I had a running coach named Chris Hinshaw, and he really helped me. I mean, he really helped me because he started having me look at running in a different way where I was calculated. I would be on the track. I would know exactly my pacing. I would really learn how to do it. And then we would do certain things to help us recover and flush out as we're running to then when we get in a competition setting, you're really, really crushed. How quickly you get your body back on target and get back on it was the idea.
So at the time when you were winning in the very beginning, when did you guys decide that, hey, look, meals were important or supplements? What were you, talk to me about that? What's your history about training with supplements and diet to help with performance and recovery?
I think that, especially as the sport grew, I trained more. So a typical day of training for many, many, many years was wake up in the morning, do like a fasted cardio.
Okay.
And that's anywhere from, 20 minutes to an hour of just like aggressive, high intensity cardio.
So why are you guys doing fasted cardio? Because
I just didn't want to eat right before I got into it. Right.
Okay.
I would just wake up, have a glass of water, boom, would go at it. And it would not be moderate intensity. It would be high intensity for a long period of time. Right.
Are you checking your heart rate or is it just?
Yeah. I mean, you just kind of, at that point, I wasn't like necessarily shooting for a specific thing, but it would be, I should back that up. In the mornings, I would either choose to do intervals that were high intensity or moderate intensity for a longer duration, like 30 minutes to an hour. And after that, the reason why I chose to do cardio in the morning was for no other reason that it was hard for me to motivate myself to lift in the mornings. It just wasn't my thing. I would wake up and I'd want to get right into training because I had to get back to business. But for me to lift, I would need to spend a bunch of time warming up, prepping the body.
Was it food? Because in bodybuilding, we do it. We want to try to get workouts in normally after we eat to get some carbs in, to be able to get your meals in. Was that the case, or was it just all your schedule?
No, it was just all based on schedule, right? Yeah. It was the ability to get up out of bed, literally go in the garage and crush it and not have to worry about warming up to avoid injury. It just wasn't that big of a deal. Then you would go back and in the midday, that's where you would really do your traditional, more CrossFit style, where it was strength and conditioning combined. And that would normally be like 90 minutes of just aggressive strength training and then what they call couplets and triplets, which is either 2 or 3 exercises combined that you would normally do like a push-pull or a whatever. So you can keep your body moving throughout the entire thing. So your heart rate stayed at a high level and you were really stimulating. Then in the evening, I would do more muscle stamina. So the goal of the evening sessions was more gymnastic stamina related. So what would happen is I'd train in the morning, get to work, train in the afternoon, get to work. And then I'd get home and I would get back to a stamina building. So that could be things like pull-ups, strict handstand push-ups, even air squats, something to build up time under tension and muscle stamina so I wouldn't fail. Like maybe I would do 300 air squats. Maybe I would do a couple hundred pull-ups. Maybe I would do a bunch of handstand push-ups. multiple days a week to build stamina in those positions versus pure strength. And then I would, that'd be it for the day. So it was typically those 3 every day for a long time.
So again, when I put
food, sorry.
Yeah, but let's go back to the cardio. The cardio, it aligns with what we do, but I have my athletes do fasted cardio because we're trying to get a fasted cardio to basically get your body going in the morning, get your body burning body fat because you're in a fasted state. So right out of bed, sometimes water, add a fat burner to get some energy going, get something to kind of get you like a caffeinated beverage of some sort. Some people will like black coffee. A lot of people like to take some kind of fat burner, drink that, and then go straight on their cardio 10 minutes later and do anywhere from half an hour to an hour, depending on how high their body fat is. But they're doing that to try to get maximum amounts of body fat off to get them leaner faster.
Right.
But did you notice, because I mean, you're pretty lean all the time. So that probably also got you pretty ripped.
I mean, yeah, but there was zero intention there.
Right. What I'm saying is just that's just like a byproduct.
Yeah. It was just a byproduct, right? The goal was, how do I get as well conditioned as possible in different time domains? So,
but you guys didn't care whether your body fat was at 10 or 5.
No,
it doesn't matter.
And actually, for that matter, you probably wouldn't want it to be too low. Right? Because you want to have enough stored energy, and which goes into your diet question. For me, I think this is just the way I trained it. I'm not saying this is everybody, but from the morning until like maybe until during the day, I wouldn't eat much. I'd have like peanut butter, perfect food bars. I'd have little snacks here and there, but it was almost fasting for the most part. And then at night, I would just crush it.
And what are you eating? Tell me what you're eating.
Well, because like during the day, let's just say in the morning, right? Have some black coffee. Even till this day, I still kind of eat like this. Have a moderate breakfast. Let's just say it was, I don't know, a couple eggs and some spinach and tomatoes or whatever, and maybe a slice of toast. Then as the day went on, right, I was working and I was getting ready to train again. So because you're training multiple times a day, I don't like to feel sluggish or too full. Mm-hmm. This also goes for when I was competing. When I was competing, you would never have full meals because you're competing in an event like every other hour. So if you ate too much, you'd feel sluggish.
Yeah.
So during the day, it'd be a lot of like I said, snacking, like maybe half a sandwich, peanut butter and honey. It would be stuff like that. And then afterwards, I would really be able to consume quite a bit of calories. And then in the late evening, I would still probably consume.
So what is that? Tell me afterwards. Are you doing clean food, dirty food? What are you doing?
I mean, at the time, for years, I would do whatever my wife made. And traditionally, she was making pretty good food. I would just consume quite a bit of it. And then at night, I would consume like another dinner after. So like, let's just say I got home at 5:30 and I did my stamina building. Then at 6:30, we had dinner. Then at like 9 o'clock, I would have another like some type of meal / snack to then get me ready for the next day, and then I would do it again. And that happened for a while.
Were you in Kubide?
Oh yeah, I get down some Kubide. Yeah, some Dolma and some Kubide.
That's awesome. We got to go to eat Kubide.
Dude, I love it.
Where do you like to go?
There's a new place actually off Moore Park we just went to that was amazing.
Stone Stew?
Stone Stew.
Yeah, Stone Stew solid.
Dude, it was great.
Yeah, Stone Stew solid.
Yeah, I actually had, for the first time, I'd never had it before. So I mean, I've grown up and we've made Kubide. We've had all types of tarik and you name it, right? We've had it all. But I've never seen it with the stew with like the smash, like you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Had like beans in it. And anyways, I enjoyed that. It was there.
Are you a horma sabzi guy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So my grandma used to make an amazing sabzi and then an amazing dolma. So there's actually a YouTube video of me making dolma with my grandma from like when I was 15. And my wife still makes it today.
Really?
It's one of my favorites.
We got to go out. We got to go out and eat some Persian food.
I'm down.
Crush some Persian food. But so all of that stuff, so the tech wasn't there. Do you think now they're much more into the supplements and all of that for recovery?
I mean, now it's like you got the Whoops, which is, the recovery was such a critical component. So back then, I would take some supplements and take some protein. And I never really got into anything but like a protein powder. And it wasn't as common as the sport grew to take a ton of supplements. And steroids, maybe they're around, they just weren't there when I was around because maybe it was just because I finished competing in 2015, 16. I think steroids have gotten better and better and better. But at the time, I think the concept was either we were tested all the time,
Okay.
all the time.
Okay.
But I think that no one really knew about steroids.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because I don't know what that situation was like, because was that something in the beginning that they didn't test and then they tested?
They started testing in like when the money got real, they started testing.
Okay.
So I want to say it was like 2011. They started
Some
testing.
some of those athletes, man, are, both men and women are looking pretty jacked. I mean,
yeah, I mean, look, I could, I would say this, whether we're talking on a podcast or in person, I have never in my physical, like whatever, seen, witnessed, or heard any of my peers or myself take steroids.
Uh-huh.
And I've been tested more times than most people. That being said, is it around? I'm sure it is. And there's been people that have been popped for it, but it wasn't as common, especially as I was coming up in the sport. So.
Well, and I think things have changed too since the beginning.
Oh yeah, things have changed. More money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine the performance enhancing drugs have shifted too, right? Back in the day, maybe they were more for aesthetic, which didn't really help out a CrossFit guy. It was more like, hey, what am I going to do to perform better on all these events?
Right.
But yeah, there was some people that got popped a few times.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I was going to ask is, now that you've seen it evolve, is it something that you thought about going back and trying to compete again? Because I don't know how old is too old for that type of thing, or when you get the big drop off. It's
really weird. So I competed as an individual. I competed for 8 years.
Uh-huh.
And I stopped competing when my daughter got diagnosed with leukemia in 2016. And that was a really easy decision to stop competing. And then they had what's called a Legends event in 2019, and they invited me to it. And I competed with like all these like OGs of the sport. And that was really fun. I trained hard for it and I really enjoyed myself. My goal was actually 3 things, right? I wanted to look good with my shirt off, which was the aesthetic side. I wanted to be a contender, meaning like, be in the pack, right? Don't be that guy who's just getting his ass kicked. And I wanted to enjoy the experience. Those are like my 3 goals. And I hit all of those. So that was fun. I don't see myself getting back into competing in CrossFit only because I had such a great run for such a long time, and I would want to be very competitive if I was going to compete.
Right.
And I'm not in the mindset to put myself there. Now, am I going to compete in other things? Sure. Like jiu-jitsu, for example. I'm excited about that. But CrossFit was a great era for me. I had an amazing time with it. But when Ava got sick, I could no longer professionally compete.
And just to be clear now, she's better now.
Yeah, she's way better now.
Yes.
It's just hard for me to get back into the saddle when I've been off training like that for so long.
Yeah. And it's one of those things. It is a momentum thing too, right? It's a matter of just trying to always compete at such a high level. You got to continue and stay right at that,
and you got to know why you want to compete. It's like bodybuilding. It's like anything, right? A lot of people, they look at it from the sidelines. They say, oh, I could do that. It's like, okay, well, fucking go do it. Right. And if you're a bodybuilder who wants to go compete at Mr. Olympia, at the Olympia, like you're not going to get there if you're doing it for money, fame. You have to have a deep 100%. Internal reason why you want to be there.
Yes.
The money and the fame are going to be a byproduct potentially, but they might not. And so, for me, you have to have a reason why you want to go compete on the high level. And if I'm not in that mindset, then I shouldn't be doing it in the first place. And that goes for pretty much anything that I want to go do.
Yeah. And that's anybody. When you go and do something, it's passion driven, it's a whole different playing field than going in and doing something for the superficial cause of money, fame, or just basic accolades. If you're trying to do it for likes or you're trying to do something, it's not going to be done at a very, very high level, and it's not sustainable.
Yeah. For a long time. No. And you're totally right.
Yeah. And the big thing is your business, man. This is one thing. Like, people who start to win Olympias don't go out and start supplement companies right when they start winning. They do it afterwards because they got to focus so much on that. You, on the other hand, started your own CrossFit box right when you won, or right before you won, I think, right?
Yeah.
And
it was like the same week.
And now you have how many locations?
Well, right now, I mean, it's, COVID rocked us a little bit. We're getting back on track. I think we have about 20 right now.
About 20.
Yeah. And the reason why I say about is because our business has 3 main verticals. We have open to the public gyms that you and I have been at. We have corporate wellness gyms where we run the fitness center, and we're about to be turned on for another site. It's always evolving. And then we have our digital model, which is our, app and our coaching app. So we have 2 apps. We have one for the end athlete,
Right.
which is great.
Mhm.
And we have one for the coaches. So that builds up our business. And yeah, I mean, the business has been a lot of fun. We've learned a lot over the years.
How much has COVID affected you?
COVID from a brick and mortar perspective was obviously devastating. The good news is we've had diversified revenue streams. And so anybody who has a business, I would recommend to think through that process. So, like legs to a table, we were fortunate to have multiple revenue streams. Corporate wellness and our digital kept us afloat. And now we're turning it back on. All the brick and mortars.
Right. Are they all based in California?
All of our brick and mortar that we own, yes. That we operate, no, they're all over the world. So our corporate wellness locations, our biggest clients are Western Digital
Okay.
and Lucasfilms. And so we have a site in San Francisco with Lucasfilms. We have sites with Western Digital over Asia.
That's got to be pretty badass though.
That's pretty
Lucasfilms.
cool.
Have
Yeah.
you been to that site?
Yeah.
Do they
Yeah.
have all the Star Wars shit there?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm a Star Wars nerd.
You're a Star Wars nerd. Yeah.
I love
So
it.
like I didn't really appreciate it until I started watching Star Wars with the kids. And then I really started like getting into it. And so Lucas.
Have you seen all of them or no?
Yeah. At LDAC, which is Lucas Digital Arts, is where we service their fitness center. But they also have like this Lucas, like a ranch.
Yeah.
And at
That's
their
Skywalker Ranch. I think.
Skywalker Ranch.
Right.
And so we don't run their fitness center there. We just help them build it. So I was able to go there a couple times. And the first time I went there, they gave me a tour of the property. It was so cool because you had all these like old school posters from that are George Lucas's.
Yeah.
All these old school posters from different movies. But when you walk in, there's a Yoda, and then there's a formal Japanese warrior outfit that looks like it must be $1 million, and it probably is. But there's like 2 of them, and there's this beautiful like maroon one and a black one. You walk in, and it's draped over like this like a mannequin, right? And it's just, I mean, just world class. And the guy who was talking to us said that was the motivation for Darth Vader. And it was just such a cool analogy because you watch this like kind of like Japanese traditional warrior outfit, and then you look at how that equates to Darth Vader. It was a cool moment touring that space.
Does Disney now own that? I think that do they own the ranch now?
I don't know if they own the ranch, but I don't know actually.
It's interesting because I know they sold it for like a ton of money, but I just didn't know.
No,
if
I
the ranch
think
still
I
was
think he
still
sold Lucasfilms.
Okay, but not the
but
ranch.
not the ranch, and not LDAC, not the building in the Presidio.
Yeah, and that's up near San Fran, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so dope.
Yeah, that was a fun account. I mean, the Western Digital, doing business internationally has been a really cool learning experience because you learn about different cultures, different, so we have locations in Thailand, China, Malaysia. And when these locations came up, I was like a little kid. And fortunately, Western Digital really did a great job mentoring me, supporting me, because I didn't know what it was like doing business in different countries. And it's definitely different from a cultural perspective in terms of like how you get deals done, but also from a legal perspective, how are we going to pay these people? Well,
let's talk a little bit about that. So how did you go from one CrossFit box to now over 20 doing corporate stuff? Did you envision all of this, or was it something that just kind of played out as you started to build, that you started bringing in some different key players within your organization to help you with the expansion?
Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, the goal was always one way, and it hasn't changed, meaning I want to do what I love, and I want to provide that to other people. So we hire employees. And then if we hire more employees, we can go connect with more members. And the more members we get, we can go do good shit. So for example, I just did a webinar this morning on blood drives. I'm a big believer that we should be doing more blood drives. So how do we get our community fired up about donating blood? Well, that's an example of how we could kind of grow this kind of like greater community. As the business grew, I knew I wanted to grow because I wanted to stay in alignment with that. I wanted to build a greater community. I wanted to make a bigger impact on more people. And I wanted to grow it for my family and for other families. And so I started off 1 location, then 2, then 3, then 4. And then essentially what happened is I started seeing the bonds and relationships that were created with a coach and a community. And bodybuilding kind of might have this, but it's more of an individual thing. When you have a small group class, you can connect with a lot of people and you make friendships. And I said, man, companies would love to have that, right? Companies would love to foster that sense of culture. And so I started going and pitching corporate wellness to different companies, going there at 5 a.m., taking a bunch of kettlebells and running classes. And that stemmed into the corporate wellness.
So I'm sure it didn't hurt you when you were the CrossFit champion and you could walk in the front door and they go, oh, it's Jason Khalipa, the CrossFit champion. So to be able to at least get in the door.
Yeah. I mean, for some, like, I mean, the brand and the reputation definitely didn't hurt. But if you don't perform well, if you're not professional,
Absolutely.
if you aren't a good person, they're going to see right through it. And so it did open some doors for sure. And then the door would open and I had to either run through it or close it. And, in business, we've had a lot of opportunities, and some of them I wish I had said no to, and other ones I wish we had done a better job executing on. But I'm sure just like you, over the last, so we started in 2008, it's now 2020, 21. And so 13 years, it's quite a while.
That's when I incorporated Evogen.
Yeah. So Evogen, a great example, right? And
2008.
over the years, you just learn a lot, right? You from employees to opportunities and whatnot.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. And it's so funny because, again, it took somebody in St. Louis to turn around and be like,
man.
hey, you guys should hang out. You guys, I'm going to put a group text together. I'm going to do this. I think that's what he did. I think he actually ended up sending me a group text or something along that side and said, hey, you guys need to hang out. You guys are like 5 minutes from each other. This is stupid.
Yeah. No, and it's been great. And, getting to know more about you and more about your brand and what you guys have to offer. It's just, anybody out there who wants to be successful with whatever they're doing, like, I think the funny thing about life is, like, when I started the company, I thought I knew a lot because at the time I had learned from the current owner of the business for a really long time. His name was Joe Gigantino. I would ride the elliptical with him all the time, just trying to pick his brain.
And he was the owner of which business?
It was called Milpitas Health and Fitness. So it was a gym that I used to work at. And you would think you know some things, right? So I graduated from college and I decided to open up a gym. I was 21, 22, and you think you know something. And then as the time goes on, you realize you don't know a damn thing. And people could tell you things, but until you actually experience it, you can't see it you have to see it for yourself. And so here I am at 35, 13 years in, and I'm really curious what's going to happen 10 years from now. How many more life lessons? How many more business cases? How many more of this? Because, they say like, oh, hire slow, fire fast. It's like, well, until it actually happens, you can understand like how to now see that again in the future, what could I do better?
Yeah. And that's, you hear those kinds of sayings and sometimes it's relatable and sometimes it's not.
Right.
It just really depends, especially because the other thing is that we are entrepreneurs in the most competitive space in the entire country, the Silicon Valley.
Yeah. The Silicon Valley is tough.
I mean, your office was right next to Netflix. I'm a block away, and we have eBay up the road. We have Facebook 15 minutes away. We have Apple 10 minutes away. We have them, just this really expensive area, and you've been able to thrive. And it's like, it's one of those things. It's kind of like New York. They say, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere.
Yeah.
And we've literally, tried and tested and it's been one of those things where it's been super difficult, and what are your future plans, man? What do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
The digital side, and I think it's continuously, owning and operating gyms is very important to me because we have many gyms that use our programs.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be able to always lean on the fact that like, hey, we practice what we preach. We are in here developing programs and session plans for you to go deliver a great class, and we're testing them ourselves. That's important to me. So we're always going to have our brick and mortar. That's always going to be the pinnacle of the experience. Then we have an app for coaches that I think is world-class. We want to continue to grow. We have an app for athletes that I think provides them functional training tools at home. And my goal is to continuously refine those experiences and grow those experiences to get a bigger network and get more people to engage with the app. So that's the initial goal while servicing our corporate clients and growing our current member base. And aside from that, man, just enjoying the process, it's it.
And getting ready for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments.
Oh yeah. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments. I
Yeah.
just think, that's more of like a hobby, right? It's aggressive and I like it.
Well, what's going on with that? Are you going to be competing?
Yeah. So I'm competing in Master Worlds in November. That's like world.
Where's that located?
Vegas. And so, like this morning, the thing about jiu-jitsu, if no one's ever done it before, is that, like it's the most humbling. It's so humbling and it's very rewarding. It's like a game of chess with another person. And in the beginning, it's a really high barrier to entry. But after a while, when you start actually getting things to click, it's very rewarding. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I think you've been doing that for how many years now?
6
years. And at some point, are you going to think about doing something in the physique related space?
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, look, you kind of put the
bug.
You put the bug.
I planted the seed, guys.
You planted a seed. You did. And I would be, I don't know how, I don't know what local competition there is. I'd have to wrap my head around like what exactly it looks like, right? So if you wrote out a program, you said, hey man, I need you to do this, right? Well, does that mean I have to give up this? I would just need to know what's in store, but it could be fun.
I think you should do something. I think, and guys, if you haven't seen the video, like I said, the video just dropped today of world champion CrossFitter Jason Khalipa versus world champion bodybuilder, meaning top 5, I should say, Olympia competitor Derek and Lunsford. And you guys were kind of going back and forth on training. And the cool thing about it is I honestly think your body will really stimulate a lot, just doing that kind of training, doing the FSC7 training methods and doing all of those things will get you to grow. I mean, I don't know if you noticed it or not, but you even look fuller in your shirt right now. Come on, bro. I'm telling you, like everybody who's watching this knows what I'm talking about. You have a kick-ass workout, especially when you're doing high volume and high intensity mixed together, whether it's FSC7 or something similar. And what you're going to notice is you're going to feel like you filled in the shirt a little bit because those fibers are now more glycogen rich. They're fuller. You get more of that 3D look that the bodybuilders talk about, and you get that pop, and you're going to start seeing that. Like you look a little fuller through the chest to me right now, but if you kept feeding the machine with the proper nutrition, the carbohydrates, and then with the proper training, you'll start to really fill in those shirts, and you're going to start seeing the difference, and everyone's going to be like, man, what are you doing? What are you doing different? And I just know because you have the genetic potential to do it. And I like the fact, because this reminds me a lot of Mark Bell, when he was starting to go down that road from powerlifting to bodybuilding and how much of a change that made.
How long was his journey?
Like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was a podcast. I was up in Sacramento and we were talking about Jay and Phil and all the just bodybuilders that were like how amazing they are. And he was like, oh, that's so cool. And I said, you should do it. You should think about doing one. He's like, I don't know what to do. And I go, I know a guy. And we ended up just, kicking the can about it. And then he took off his shirt afterwards and we looked at him and I think he filmed it too. And he ended up doing one of the Sacramento shows 3 months later and he ended up winning. He ended up winning his division. And then I think he took second in the open class and looked great, especially for a guy that's less aesthetic than you. Like you have a little more taper. He has more muscle, a little more thickness, but he's built a little bit more straight up and down. But he does have quite a bit of muscle on him, and he ended up looking amazing. And that's actually, Andy and I started talking right after that because, Andy and him are friends. And then it was just kind of like this network kind of started growing regarding some of the things when you start working outside of your space and get off that conveyor belt that you're used to, that you and I are when you're running your business every day. And then you step off of it and do events and do some, different types of networking, whether it's intentional or not, then you start to do that. And that's kind of how the whole Mark Bell phenomenon happened. And it was cool because he was watching him. He was so excited about it. Yeah. And that's what was cool for me, because when you take somebody who's a beginner, it's great to see them get better. But when you take somebody who's really good at something else and apply that methodology of how to make that strong mental toughness and take that and be able to bring it into bodybuilding and be able to really focus that attention, and that ends up really paying off in just in spades. And at the end of the day, it was cool because he's sitting there flexing on stage and he's doing this, and I'm like, holy shit, you look great, man.
I gotta sit down with you and talk about, because like, what would that? So if someone wants to get ready for a show, they have to like. What about like how dedicated is the nutrition side?
It's super dedicated. It's super dedicated. I mean, is there some cheat meals here and there? Yes, but then as you get closer, the cheat meals get pulled out and you have to be even more dedicated. So like for weeks on end, you're having 5-6 meals a day and you're right on it because you're trying to get to that end result, which is low body fat and just super hard. Oh, man. Yeah, you got to get that, conditioned look.
Maybe I'll see what San Jose shows around.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them, man. There's a bunch of them. We can find one for you. But I think you should think about doing something, because I think that you're in that place where I think you would really see a big change, and it would be cool to document. Like, it would be good because I know that your following is used to seeing you do one thing, but I think you would excel at anything you do. So I think if you put your mind to it, it would be really cool. I don't know. Like I said, guys, I think you guys should all watch this training session with Jason and Derek if you hadn't seen it yet, and let me know what you think. But I think that it's something that getting someone who is the absolute pinnacle of a different sport and then coming over and doing bodybuilding. I think it's really cool.
Yeah. I just got the jiu-jitsu thing that I'm focused on, but
Yeah.
I definitely need to think about it because I would like to do it. Maybe after Master Worlds, I could dedicate myself for Master Worlds and then pivot to bodybuilding and do something.
So you're going to do the trifecta. You won the world championships in CrossFit. You're going to go out there and kick butt in jiu-jitsu. And then now you can go over and do some type of physique competition.
All right.
Something to think about.
All right.
Thanks. Buddy, I really appreciate you coming over, spending the time on here, talking a little bit about business, talking a little bit about CrossFit. We got to definitely do some workouts to get more.
Oh, dude, we got to do some more. I want to do a back one with you.
Okay.
I want to do like an ab one with you. And I want to do a leg one with you. So
we got to do
essentially we got to take the whole body. And if you want to do the neck, we could even do the neck. But I'm down 100% because we did the chest. It'd be nice to do the back. It'd be nice to do, quads and then hamstring.
Yeah. I think I could make you cry doing arms.
Oh shit. Arms?
Yeah. Cause you love arms. I mean,
dude, I could,
that's your body part. You're known for your arms.
Yeah. My triceps, my arms. So, but my back would be the quads and the back would be interesting.
Yeah, they would be, especially because I'd love to see how you squat with more time under tension, when you're doing rep after rep with 2 or 3 plates and seeing how that is, because you guys work so well on form, especially when it comes to some of the stuff that I've seen you do. And, it would be great. I'd love to do it.
All right, let's do it.
Sounds good, man. Well, appreciate it. Again, guys, Hany Rambod with my special guest, Jason Khalipa, world renowned CrossFitter, entrepreneur, and all around great guy. So that's the truth.